Thank you all for attending tonight. We do have a quorum, so we can move forward. First item is to approve the minutes from last week's meeting. That would have been the 31st of March. So I would entertain a move to approve those minutes.
Hi, Thomas Golden, motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Darren Weston, second.
Okay, thank
Darren
you.
Weston, second motion.
Okay, thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Any discussion, any changes, updates to the minutes? No? Okay. All right, Josh, we'll take a roll call on approving the minutes from our meeting on March 31st.
Ed,
Yes.
Leonie,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
and it looks like Steve just joined. Steve, did you hear that motion?
I did not hear the motion. So I'll abstain.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Steve, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Sorry about my tardiness.
No, no problem. We just approved the minutes from last week, so. All right, next item is public comment. Do we have any citizen that would like to speak during public comment? No? Okay, I guess Alan is choosing not to speak tonight. So, all right, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is old business. We've got a number of items here to go through. So the first one is a proposal to improve counselor to constituent communication. This was a follow-up from our last meeting, Article 2.6C, and Cleone took that one, and she had submitted something for that. So I will share my screen. It was in the mock-up that I sent everybody. So we'll I'll let Cleone kind of review that with us, and then we can discuss it and hopefully vote on it. So Cleone?
Sure. I'll just read it and give you a moment to reflect and then react. City Council members shall regularly seek and promote two-way feedback that encourages all community residents to voice their concerns and observations that may inform decision-making. Community residents shall be invited to engage in this two-way communication using multiple formats that respect and affirms the diverse backgrounds, identities, home languages, culture, and abilities of residents, including but not limited to residents with limited access to technology and residents whose home language is not English. Furthermore, city councilors shall set clear expectations for addressing and responding to residents in an equitable, effective, and efficient manner.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Cleone, I'll ask the first question. How are they required to seek and promote that two-way feedback? I'm not negating that it's a great idea, but how do they do it?
I didn't want to dictate that. With changes that can change, right? So that's why I kept it open that way. I didn't want to limit what that would look like just based on my imagination.
So if
come up, yeah.
So if a counselor posted on their personal Facebook or like in the town hall, please contact me at my email, here it is. Would we be okay with that being sufficient?
Two-way feedback usually means that either they host an office hour or something where someone can ask a question and they can get a response, versus right now is that 3-minute dialogue and they can't go back and forth. So that's
okay,
that two-way.
So you say usually, where does that usually come from? And I'm not trying to be argumentative, but if I'm counselor reading the charter,
question.
Like where you say usually includes office hours, usually, where is usually defined like that? Where does that come from?
I just gave an example that office hours is a two-way conversation that one can have.
So I think what triggered this, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but I think what triggered this was we were having a discussion at our last meeting about requiring our city councilors to hold, I think we said quarterly meetings or something with the public.
Yep.
And so we discussed that, and then we didn't really come to any conclusion on that, and then we ended up with this. So this, I think, is really good, Cleone. I think you've really covered a lot of different aspects of, of that kind of communication. I have a little bit of the same concern that Tom does, maybe to try and put a little more specificity into it. Maybe just as simple as putting some examples. City council members shall regularly seek and promote two-way feedback, and then in parentheses or somewhere in there, just say examples could include, holding face-to-face meetings, blah, 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 whatever. Is that something you think is worth adding or not? It's not, because it's not dictating, but it's showing some examples.
I would probably suggest then we put it as a definition versus embedded in here. I don't think I've seen that kind of example throughout the document, but I'm not committed to either idea.
So what are you saying would go as a definition? This whole section would go as a definition, or just, I'm not clear on what you were saying.
Are you looking for clarification on what two-way feedback looks like, or what it should look like when one seeks and promotes conversation? I guess that's what I guess I'm not quite understanding what part of it. Is it the two-way feedback that you need an example for, or what it would look like when one is looking to seek and promote dialogue between their constituents?
So Cleone, here it is for me, right? Like, if we don't say that this is the bright line, right? Like the standard, if somebody doesn't like what somebody else is doing in terms of that seek and promotion of two-way feedback, is that grounds enough to kick that person off the town council? And without a bright line and allowing it to be that subjective, could create more problems, right? Like, I just think if you're going to require this of somebody, you need to give them, there has to be a defined standard that they have to meet. Ambiguity and stuff like this, it can cause problems. And I'm not negating the idea. I think it's fantastic. I personally think that town council should go door to door outside of the pandemic and try to talk to people, but that's just not going to happen.
What do the rest of the committee think about this right now? Any other thoughts from anyone?
I prefer the language vague. It should be up to each individual council member to decide what is appropriate for them. To seek and promote two-way feedback, absolutely, there should be two-way feedback. And the language that you only get 3 minutes before a town council meeting, that's false. The 3 minutes before the town council is an extra something added in by the town council to allow the public a public forum to hear their concerns. If you go to any other representative legislative body, go to Beacon Hill, go to Washington, D.C. during their legislative session and try to say, I'm here, I want to be heard on the floor, they're going to laugh at you and the police are going to come and walk you away. That's not this form of government. The way you should be communicating with the constituents and the way they should be communicating with their council members, their elected representatives, is outside of that meeting through emails, phone calls. Every council member has a phone number through the town. Some of them have town issued cell phones. And just like any other elected official, that's how you contact them. I like the concept here that we put it in the charter that says, this is the expectation of a town council member. But I think it should be vague enough to allow that council member to decide what is appropriate. Because having served on the town council, I can tell you that a lot of the issues that come in those the public forums in those 3 minutes, are not issues for council members. The vast majority are executive branch town manager issues.
Hmm.
And, requiring council members to address those issues, they're really talking out of turn. It should be something that goes to the town manager. That's the big issue as I look at this. I think the concept of promoting that communication is absolutely solid. Anything that would require a council member to hold office hours or things like that, I'd be against. But
Okay.
I like this version. I would say there's one typo on the second full line where it says counselors. We would need to change that to council members with the spelling that's in the first line.
Is that right here?
Yes. So that should be COUNCIL, council members. But other than that, I think Cleone did a nice job of balancing the, putting something in the charter that says this is the expectation of a town council member, but leaving it so there's enough vagueness there that each council member can decide what's appropriate for them and their constituents can decide either through the ballot box or running against somebody or recall. The political question, if somebody just is not responding at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've seen that on the town council where council members were not responding to a constituent or a group of constituents, and those people showed up and they each got their 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And turned up the political heat, and I think that's effective.
I think you made an excellent point, Scott, on this, because then now I'm thinking a little differently about it than I had before. So I think what we're trying to do, obviously, is we're trying to balance here, provide some level of balance, because we know that some counselors, some of which won't be named here, like to look for loopholes and look for other ways that they can circumvent anything in the charter. So if we leave it very vague and very general, then we've essentially created, I think, a big loophole for them to do whatever they want. But at the same time, I understand what you're saying is to require it in a certain way, shape, or fashion is not realistic at this point. Would you be adverse to putting just something in there that says examples or not? Not even.
My concern with examples is that it may be read as mandatory.
Okay.
Right. They become prescriptive.
Okay. That's fair.
Or if it's not listed as an example, some people could say that it doesn't count.
Gotcha.
And as technology changes, there may be methods out there that we are completely unaware of.
Right.
10 years ago, we wouldn't have even thought of Zoom as an effective method to communicate.
All right. Okay. Steve, any thoughts from you on this?
I actually agree with Scott, and I don't really think there's any better way to describe it than he did. So I'm in agreement with that.
Okay. And Darren?
Well, I thought that the concern, like when this first was discussed, this concern was that when people attend the council meetings, when the public, they express their concerns, or that they don't get any response, or like they're being ignored.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but that's the second item. That's the one that Janet responded back on.
Okay.
This one was specifically around counselors, seeking, providing a better linkage with their constituents for a two-way feedback.
Okay. Because I thought these could be kind of go well together, in that maybe the counselor would be the person who could, outside of the meeting, respond to the, whatever concerns the citizen may have, and let them know, whether their concerns are legitimate or appropriate, or try to get some dialogue going back and forth so that people don't feel like they're being ignored.
Yeah, no, good point. But as far as the way this is being delivered by Cleone, are you okay with this? You like the way it's presented?
Yeah, it's well presented.
Good, okay. Has Janet joined yet?
Yes.
Yes, I
Oh.
don't know why. I was there, but it just kept saying host is, I have to wait for the host to put me in. So I finally got in.
You can blame Josh.
Okay, Josh. I even tried to call him, so if I hung up on you, Josh, that was,
Oh, that's okay.
I saw that I got in. I obviously got in late in your conversation, but I just have a question on Cloney's, where it says city council members shall regularly seek and promote two-way feedback that encourages all community residents. Is this supposed to be her thought process for the district counselor for their district, or is this, it sounds like all the members are supposed to do it with encourage all community residents to voice their concerns. So it's almost sounds like it would be like at a meeting, you're doing it for all the council members, for all the residents. Was her thought process for the specific counselors for the specific districts? Or is it for, that's the only comment I have. Oh, you're there.
Yeah, it would be for all. Yeah, I am here. So it would be for everyone due to the fact that I can reach out to any council member that I feel. But as far as hosting that two-way conversation, is that common practice that they don't want to hear from other areas, or is it usually open to all residents? That's a good question. I hadn't thought of that.
Well, I would think like I would talk to my precinct 7, so I would talk more so to my my district counselor about a concern. As far as for all the sections, you know, unless there was something specific, I guess you could, but it seems like your district counselor should, I don't know how to shut this off.
So Janet, you realize that we all have 3 counselors that support us, right?
Meaning the counselor at large.
Right, we each
and
have 2,
the 2,
right.
and then the district, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the only I was just clarifying for myself, was this intended for that type of communication, or, because I'm reading it and it sounds like it's not specific to each district.
It's not, it says city council members, so that implies all 9.
Right. So are they supposed
So
to?
each of them, each member is, you know, it's just like this whole section pertains to all counselors. It's not specific to district or to at large. It's general requirements that apply to all.
Okay. I just was trying to read it the way it was. That's all.
Okay, great. Okay, well, if there are no suggested changes other than the one that Scott made on the clarifying the city councilor members down the bottom there, is someone willing to move on a motion to approve this?
Ed, I was just looking at what you put in for the edit there.
Yeah.
Can we just make that, so it says furthermore, city council members?
Oh,
or
council.
counselor?
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. There we go. Okay,
I, Cleone Mainville, motion to approve section 2.7, section 15.
2.6, right?
26C,
I'm sorry, 2.6.
26C 15.
I, Cleone Mainville, motion to approve 2.6C 15.
Okay, is there a second?
Get a second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Josh, we're going to need a roll call on approving this addition to section 2-6C, number 15.
Ed,
Yes.
Tony,
Yeah.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes,
Scott,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes,
thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again, Cleone. Well done. Item 2, I'm going to just skip item 2 and come back to it because that was something that was actually in the decision matrix. So I apologize for putting that out of order. I'm going to go next to item 3 on the agenda, which was the proposal to address the citizen feedback and follow up at council meetings. This was what Janet had provided here in yellow. So Janet, I'm going to let you talk about what you did here.
well, I left I separated 7 into 2 parts. That's the way I was looking at it. I mean, if it could be put in a different way, but I added B to, I went through the town code book, and this, along with other things, or you can find a lot of the stuff that's in the charter in the town code administrative section. But I looked at that, and I just wanted all meetings, suggested all meetings of the city council must provide for a period in which the council will comment, acknowledge, or address the public's concerns or questions brought forth by the citizens in public forums at the previous meeting as required in the Bridgewater, Massachusetts Town Code. I added that in case we needed it. Bridgewater, Massachusetts Town Code, Section 14, citizens comment. I was looking that they should, and I did mention it at town council last night, just like they allow a spot for citizens comments at the beginning and at the end, they should allow a spot already designated within their agenda. And this will be to discuss something that was brought out at the previous meetings, so that even though, because they can't communicate with you when you make your comments, except for maybe a clarification question. If they have that, they would make sure that it would make citizens feel like it's going to be worthwhile to speak. Right now, if they speak, they don't get a feedback, they don't get any acknowledgement later on, or anything that possibly addresses their concerns, even if it's to say we're working on it, at least it acknowledges. So, and according to the town code, they're supposed to do it. It's right in there that says all inquires should be responded to if the information is available at the time, or a public response should be forthcoming at a future meeting of the town council. I figured if it's in the charter, they have, they'd have to pay attention to it a little more. They're not really doing what's in the town code. So if
So you're saying it's already, this issue is already addressed in the administrative code.
yes, but other things are too. It's not, if you look at the other items in the charter, if you read the charter and administrative, I couldn't give you any examples right now because the thing is so long, but I see things and I'm like, wait a minute, is that the charter? And I realize, no, I'm not reading the charter, I'm reading the administrative code. So there's like duplicate of certain things within. The town code has the charter, and one section is the charter and the other section is administrative code.
Right.
And some of this stuff that we're looking at is also in the administrative code. So I didn't think there was any issue, it wouldn't be any issue that you'd consider it duplicating, because there's a lot of duplications. So
So the way it's structured is that the charter would make a statement about something. And then, then the administrative code, the way it's supposed to work is the administrative code would then elaborate on or put additional detail to something that had already been, mentioned in the charter.
right, but this
It shouldn't be a replication. It should be an expansion of, or full more detail of.
well, it's not necessarily a replication, but if on that theory, 7A that I marked A shouldn't be in the charter either, because that's in section 14 of the citizens' comments. It says that they're to have a, public comments in the beginning and the end. So, and here it is in the charter.
Right, but
saying-
it's not duplicated, Janet. What this says, 7A basically just says there will be a period of public comment. What the administrative code does, it says there's going to be 2 periods. There's going to be one at the beginning, one at the end. People can only talk for 3 minutes. There's a lot more detail in the administrative code. This just puts the stake in the ground here that says there will be public comment.
I just, there's got to be a way for them to, well, if it can't be in, it can't be in, but it does need to be addressed because they're not following through even with the town code.
So the issue seems to me then to be one of enforcement of the administrative code. If this issue is already addressed
Well,
in the
not-
administrative code in terms of follow-up, if people ask questions or if people ask the council a question and those questions are never followed up on by anybody, then the administrative code is not being followed. Is that your understanding of what's happening?
Yeah, I guess you could say that, yeah. They're not, it's supposed to be that they allow time for that and they're not. Just like they allow time for public comment, which they are. So.
Yes, Scott, you obviously you were a counselor. Now, I understand that if you've got, if you get 25 people showing up at a council meeting because maybe there's a topic that's hot on everybody's minds and you let every person speak to all 25, trying to respond to all 25, you could take the whole council meeting just doing that.
Well,
Right.
that's
So
not what it's saying.
to address that, it's to clarify here, it's not just section 14, it's Administrative Code Part 2, Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 14. There's multiple Section 14s. This is under the Article 2 is the Town Council Rules and Procedures.
Yeah, sorry.
And yeah, it took me a while to find which Section 14 we were dealing with here, but there is a provision at the, I think it's the second to last sentence that if there are multiple questions on the same topic, they can be declared duplicative and answered with one answer. The way this typically would work is at the end of the town council meeting, the council president will open the floor to council member comments. And that's their opportunity to respond publicly. And that's the way it worked while I was there. And that worked well. Because a lot of times people will come forward with a question that you just don't have the answer to right then and there. And you need time to research it. So you come back at the next meeting and you would answer it at that point. And it's just at the very end of the meeting, and the council members get to respond to those questions.
Well, then,
Sometimes
I
in
guess,
between the meetings, you can reach out to the person and respond to them that way. There's a multitude of ways that a council member can respond to these questions.
yeah, but don't you think part of the issue is no one's tracking what the questions are or what the issues are? It's almost, it seems to me like somebody should, like, I don't know if it's the secretary or if it's the town manager, but somebody should be noting all the questions that get raised so that then at the end of the meeting, maybe before they adjourn the meeting, they assign responsibility to who's going to follow up on these. And we have 10 follow-ups. And who's going to follow up at the next meeting so that somebody has a takeaway, an action item to follow up on these. Right now, that doesn't happen. And it's sort of willy-nilly. I mean, if somebody remembers what was spoken, it gets responded to, but if not, it gets lost.
Yeah, I don't know how it's done now. When I was there, it was a citizen would get up, they would state their name and their address. And one of the reasons for that is, for me, I would know if this was my constituent or not, as the District 1 representative. And if they were one of my constituents, I would make sure they got a follow-up. Depending on, the situation would dictate whether it was a phone call or an email, or I just respond at the next meeting.
Yeah.
So, because I mean, not
don't you
every
think-
comment is a nice comment. Some of them, some can be outright nasty and accusatory, and bordering on defamation. It does happen. Local politics gets very, very nasty. Hopefully, it doesn't do it too much, but it does happen. So, that's how I would address it. And whether or not that's happening still is, I think that's an issue where you get into, town council members not following the administrative code should be addressed with the council president. If you go in there and you ask a question and you don't get a response, that would be my follow-up, would be to go to the council president and say, they're not following the administrative code. I need a response. If you're
So
still not getting it, then-
section A talks about the fact that there will be a period of public comment.
Yeah.
Would it be appropriate to have B, instead of saying that there needs to be a period of comment and acknowledgement, would it be appropriate to say that all comments or comments need to be followed up? Something to that effect? So at least the charter is directing the council in some way that the questions and issues that get brought up during public comment should be reviewed and responded to by either the council members, the appropriate council members, something to that effect. I'm just wondering if we just leave it without anything, then maybe then it's just an administrative code enforcement issue.
Yeah, I was just thinking of action line, some type of action that just becomes second nature, that it's in there. They do have at the end of their meetings comments from the town council, but a lot of them say nothing to comment, or they may say something, but it's not necessarily. Last night was a good example that they did actually acknowledge a few things that were of concern. They did acknowledge, most of the counselors did speak in regards to that, except for one that brought up something else. But if I'm just thinking of, if there's a way of getting them to just naturally include that in their action line, to do it. And even if it's to just say, we're still working on it, no one ever hears, are you working on it? Did you hear us? You may be listening, but did you hear us, or vice versa? Did you hear us and are you listening? It just helps people realize, they can just say at the last meeting, these were some concerns and we're still working on them. That's that's just really simple. But if they can somehow, I don't know how to do it. I just put it that way.
Yeah, what if we said something at the very end here, just a simple statement that says, council members are responsible for responding back to citizen comments, period.
But not necessarily right then and there, not looking for a dialogue, but.
Right.
And there wouldn't be a dialogue when they address it at the next meeting. It wouldn't be a dialogue it would be them speaking. It wouldn't be the public, because you can't have a dialogue. You'd be there, like I said last night to them, they'll be there till 3 o'clock in the morning if they did that. So somehow of getting them to, forcing them to respond. I mean, it's not that anybody's doing a bad job. It's just, they just need to acknowledge, because they do thank you for speaking. But a couple meetings ago, thank you for speaking, but okay, we spoke, but is there anything going to be acknowledged? I mean, because we can't have two-way conversations.
So I just added this sentence here. Does that capture what we're trying to do here? It doesn't tell them how to do it. Doesn't tell them when to do it.
Do it.
It just says that they need to be responsible for following up to comments, period.
I think that would work, and then we wouldn't need paragraph B.
Right. That's what I was thinking, Scott.
What do you think of that, Janet?
Well, it's a start for them, yeah, and then if they can figure it out, so I guess if the town code, on the town code or their rules and regulation, or whatever the correct terminology, they can figure out how to do it. And then if they don't do it, we can call them, a citizen can call them up on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And if it's in charter and the town code, because it's right there. I'm sorry I didn't put the section, but that town code thing's so long.
Yeah, but it's certainly appropriate for any citizen to speak about the administrative code too. I mean, and hold them accountable if they're not following it's their own rules that they've come up with.
Right.
If they're not following their own rules, then hold them accountable and say, why aren't you guys doing this?
I did it last night.
Oh, you did?
I did it last night because I had brought it up 2 weeks ago, and then I actually found the code because of all this. So last night, at the end of their meeting, I did bring it up again, and then I read to them the town code.
Good for you, Janet. It sounded like it worked too, because you said there was follow-up at the end, right?
Well, no, actually, there was no, they didn't bring that up, but they did talk about, there was concern about the Flag Street, the rally and stuff, and there's been a lot of issues, and they brought up that, and also with Mr. Chase. I came into the meeting late.
I see.
So,
Okay.
but this is the first time I've actually heard them spend time talking about a specific issue, except for one. One didn't comment, one had his own agenda.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, is there any further discussion on this, or would somebody like to move to approve?
I did have a question.
Yep.
I did. So there were a couple of suggestions that were mentioned here about how to hold city councilors accountable for these things. And I was wondering if there's somewhere that it's written, because Scott mentioned a really good point. If you feel that your councilor isn't doing what they're supposed to do, then you go to the president of the city council. But it's these kinds of nuances that I wonder, is there that kind of chain of communication that citizens have access to? Because I wouldn't know all of these other ways to communicate and be heard, other than what was mentioned tonight.
So if you are unhappy with your counselor or counselors, as I say, we have 3 of them. I guess you could contact the council president. I mean, there's nothing in the charter that addresses that.
Well,
I mean,
Ed, I would point to the section of the charter that requires the council president to enforce the charter.
Yep.
And then the rules and procedures sort of fall under that same umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And if if it's the council president's responsibility to alert another council member that they're not following the charter, and it's the council member's job to alert the president when they're not following the charter, the same would apply to the municipal code.
Yeah.
You understand? Am I clear? Kind of.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just thinking of a resident who already doesn't feel heard. It sounds like they would need to go in and read through the document and say, oh, okay, the president needs to hold my city councilor accountable because I can't be heard. I guess that's something for maybe a local group that needs to kind of put together a cheat sheet. If these things, if this doesn't happen, then you go here. It doesn't sound like there is a clear communication chain that a regular resident who might be frustrated and don't know the role of the charter or all these things would be able to come to that conclusion. Yes, I hear what you're saying, that once you look in and you dig and you see who is responsible for enforcing the charter, then it does point to the president. But I'm just thinking about the kind of everyday use of a resident that may not have the patience or inclination to read through the charter just to get that information. But that's something that maybe a community group can bridge that gap.
Now, Cleone, when you say that, are you talking about a council member who's simply not responding at all, or who simply doesn't agree?
Not responding at all. I've had that situation myself. I've sent something out to all of them. All but one didn't respond. You follow up and you get silence. And I did not think that, oh, I need to kind of go to the president to make sure this council responds. It wasn't something.
Did the one that responded, was that your district councilor?
I didn't even pay attention because the issue that I was bringing forth was universal. So I didn't look necessarily to who is my counselor.
I can tell you the normal practice when I was there was that if an email came in to the entire council, the district councilor would be the one that would respond.
Several of them responded, except for one. I did not look to see if it was my specific counselor at the time.
Others could, but it was the district councilor's responsibility to respond. And sometimes in bigger issues, others would also respond. So that would be my question. Because if I write to a senator from Ohio, I don't expect a response. Yeah,
well, I mean, in a bigger view, this becomes an issue for any elected official. They're accountable to the people. They're not accountable to any superior, supervisor or anything like that. I mean, so if you have an elected official that doesn't like to respond to his or her constituents, then you vote him out of office, I guess. I mean, in the case of the council, though, you do have a president who you can go to for action on certain things. But
yeah, I like the idea of a sort of a cheat sheet for constituents as to how to follow up, and that may be beneficial for the entire process. Because if you do a good checklist of what issues need to go to the town manager, what are the types of issues that go to a town council member, that could help declutter a lot of the communication. And then you have appropriate questions going to the appropriate authorities. And then what happens if you don't get a response? If you don't get a response from the town manager, if you don't get a response from your town council member or the two at-large members, what are the next steps? So I like that idea.
So that would be something. Scott.
Cleone hit it on the head that could be like a community project type thing.
Well, it could even be something that is sponsored by one of the council members to be included as an ordinance or something in the administrative code.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd put it in the administrative code, but I think something that could be up like a PDF on the town council website.
Yeah. So Cleone, I think that if that's something that interests you, you could certainly draft an email and send it to all 9 councils, or speak at one of the council meetings and say you've got an idea and you think it would be helpful to all citizens, and see what kind of response you get. But it sounds like it's something that wouldn't necessarily go in the charter, maybe go in the administrative code, but maybe not. So, but it's a good point.
A lot of people don't know how to find the charter. And it's not easy to find in the website. I mean, I had trouble when I first was coming. I was like, where's the charter? I had a hard time finding it. And
well, I think a lot of people don't use the search bar, Janet. If you just go to the search bar at the homepage and you type in charter.
But you can get numerous copies, may not. I do that, I did the search bar. I remember I had a hard time. I first couldn't find the town code. Then I finally I probably if I go back, I'll have to remember how I found it. But I clicked on, I went, oh, there it is. You know, it was like, oh, there it is. I did the search and I did, you know, and then I went to something else and there it was at the bottom. I clicked on it. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
there it is. So it's not an easy site to necessarily navigate.
Well,
And
that's something you could provide feedback to the IT director or to Mike Dutton on that, improving the town website.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, we've got a lot to cover here tonight. I want to kind of get back to what we were discussing here. We modified, Janet provided something, we modified it, and we have something ready to move on or not move on.
I'm okay with that change if everybody feels more comfortable with that.
This is 26-7, right?
Correct.
I, Thomas Golden, motion to approve the changes we made to section 26-7.
Is that section C?
Yeah, 26C7.
26C7.
Okay, is there a second?
I,
And
Janet.
that- Go ahead, Janet.
I, Janet, second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Josh, we're going to need a roll call approving 26C7 amendment.
Ed,
Yes.
Leonie,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Janet.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. So that covers the two action items that we had from last week on the charter itself. There was one additional question that came up about the recall provision that we started to get into when we were looking at the decision matrix. So what I'm going to do now is go into the decision matrix and we'll go kind of walk through any items there that we still need to discuss tonight. Hopefully we can get through it all. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so I sort of oriented everybody at the last meeting as to how this was put together. I did remove, this is the most current version. If you remember last week, it had two other columns here. One it said for the, I think the amendment process, and it said for the special act process. I removed those and just put in comments right now because I did make comments on a bunch of these. So Tom and I offline went through this the other day, and everything that you see in yellow here is something we need to take an action on. So the first item here was the recall provision that was added by the 2014 Charter Review Committee. That was section 3-3.3. They also included a threshold that said that 35% of the registered voters needed to vote in order for a recall to be valid. So when we as a committee voted in this recall provision, we did not include the 35% threshold. But what I don't recall is actually if we had that discussion. And I went back and looked at my notes on that and I couldn't see anything. I think, Tom, you mentioned that you thought we did have a discussion about putting in a number versus a percentage. So you think we did have the discussion?
I think we had the discussion. I don't think we came to a consensus. I think it was one of those instances where we couldn't come to a consensus and moved on to save for time.
Okay. So then the
Someone can
question,
correct me. But
yep. Okay. So the question then tonight is, how do we want to leave this? Do we want to vote again to either include or not include a threshold of voters for recall, or just leave it as the Rules and Procedures Committee? The Rules and Procedures Committee took the threshold out. And that's the way it exists right now in the charter as the way we approved it back It would have been back in early January, January 20th, I believe, was the meeting, but we went through all of Article 3.
Yeah, I know we had the discussion about it, and I remember saying that 35% seemed very high when in an average town election, we don't get close to that.
Right.
So
think we actually talked about 10%, right? 10% or 10,000.
yeah, it makes a it depends on who's being recalled and the size of the district. Some of the districts are bigger than others. So a fixed number doesn't really work. But if you think about the way this works with a recall election, the timing of it as it's required, it's not going to happen generally at the same time as another election. So it'll be at a really odd time of the year unless it happens to occur, I think, within 60 or 90 days of the town election, then it's on the same day as the town election. But the rest of the year, it's just on an odd day whenever the town clerk decides to schedule it. And what is that turnout going to look like when people largely are unaware of it? I'm concerned that setting too high of a threshold for it to be a valid recall is going to create such a barrier that we essentially have no recall provision.
Or having a threshold at all, Scott, right? Right now, as I said, there's no threshold set now. And that's the way the Rules and Procedures Committee had it in the baseline that we adopted. So either say we don't want a threshold and just leave it as is, or we want to come up with a threshold, then we have to debate what that is.
Right.
So I
I
can
go
show
no
you.
threshold.
Where is that written in 3.3?
So I have to stop sharing and I'll bring up the charter again.
If you're looking for the 35% in the charter, Janet, it's not there.
No, but I was wondering
Right.
where it would be put if
Section,
it was.
it's section 3.3.
Yeah. Where would it have been put if it was to go in?
Hold on, I'm looking. I have a paper copy of the 2014.
I have so many copies.
Yeah, my concern with a threshold is that we may artificially create a situation where in order for an official to be recalled, they would have to, the proponents of the recall would have to get more people to vote for the recall than actually voted for the person to be in office.
So what they did was right in this section E, says here, if the majority of the votes cast upon the question of recall is in the affirmative, the candidate receiving the highest number of votes shall be declared elected. And then they added, provided that at least 35% of all qualified registered voters of the district or the town, in the case of an at-large counselor, shall be voted. So that's what they had added right in the middle of this section here. So is anyone willing to make the move that we add a threshold? Going once. Going twice.
What's the percentage of people that vote now? Have they, on average, not for town stuff?
It varies.
Sub 20 probably.
Well, that's why I was wondering. So
Yeah, I think it's usually around 11 or 12, might go as high as 17%.
Yeah, so obviously 35 is too high.
So most of the districts, I believe, have in the 5 to 8,000 range of people. We have 28,000, give or take, townwide. And each district has like 5 to 8 in that range. So if you say, take the middle of it, like, I don't know, say 7,000 people.
Of registered voters, not kids. You're just talking
Right.
registered voters.
Right. Yep. So don't forget, in order to recall somebody, the recall itself, just to be initiated, you have to have,
10%.
yeah, you need a lot of signatures. So just to get on the ballot,
Need
there's got to
10%.
be a lot of people, supporting that process. Now, the assumption is that all the people that, put their names on there to sign the petition to get the person out of office, those people are going to show up to vote as well, right?
Right.
So I personally don't see the need for a threshold myself.
I agree.
So again, if no one's willing to move on that, then I think we just, let's just take a final vote on the threshold. We'll take a vote on no threshold if somebody would like to make a motion on that.
I, Darren Boston, make a motion for no threshold
On the recall provision.
on the recall provision.
I, Thomas Golden, will second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Josh, we're voting on section 3-3. And this would be section E. Not to include a threshold.
Okay, Ed,
Yes.
Leoni,
Yes.
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Janet.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay.
I have to run, everybody. I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Cleone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, I'm just making this note so I don't lose it. All right, the next one here is the 2014 Charter Review Committee added language that enabled the town manager to award goods and services contracts up to $25,000 without town council approval. I believe we actually had this discussion when Mike Dutton had joined the meeting. I don't know when it was, back in February, when we were talking about Article 6, the finances. The Rules and Procedures Committee didn't agree with that. So right now, there's no limitation on what the town manager can spend, but it references Mass General Law. So there is a stipulation, there is a limit set within Mass General Law, and I believe Mike Dutton's view and the Rules and Procedures view was that we would, as Mass General Laws would change, if they change the amount, then we would follow that. So that became the accepted sort of principle of what we're looking at here. But I don't know that we specifically voted on this, so that's kind of like what I want to do with this one was what we did with the last one is, have a discussion about it and kind of vote on this specific change. Do we want to add a restriction to the town manager that he or she cannot spend over $25,000 on goods and services without town council approval?
And that just made me think of a quick question. Does it matter that we're now referring to City of Bridgewater? It's like city clerk. Is that
No.
same? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Great. don't-
Anyone? Go ahead, Scott. I mean, Tom.
I would say if the general laws handle it, why would we do something more restrictive? Let the general laws run the show. Then it's their problem, not ours.
Okay. So would you like to make to move on this one then? Let me go back to the charter so we can see the section that it's in. Oh, what did it say on the, it was
Or
actually
to
11,
42A11. So let me go back.
keep going.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see it. Go back
Yes.
up. You passed it.
oh, you passed it.
Right there.
So it says here, to be responsible for the purchase of all supplies, materials, and equipment, and approve the award of all contracts.
So do we need a motion if we're not changing that?
Well, I'd like to, if we don't, then I'm not gonna, if we look back on it, I'm not gonna know that we actually voted on.
Sure.
Yep.
Thomas Golden motion to leave that as it is.
To not put a restriction on the amount.
Yes.
Is-
Okay, so a second on that?
I have a question.
Yep.
There's probably there. What, I mean, he could approve all that, but what's the check and balance for him? It's probably there somewhere, but I mean, he can responsible for purchase and all that, but at some point, is there a way of saying no? Like if somebody thinks that it's too much or something, is that written somewhere? You know what I mean? You can give somebody a blank check. Is there a way of making sure that you have a town manager that's budget savvy? You know what I'm trying to say? It's like approval.
And I guess, yeah, but I guess it's a question is how much restriction do you put on the chief, administrative officer to do his or her job?
Right. No, I'm just asking, is there a check and balance on that?
There's no restriction right now on the amount that the town manager can purchase on supplies, materials, and equipment.
But if somebody objected, there's probably a way of
Well,
asking, is there?
there are certainly, when they go through the budget, the capital program and the budget,
Mhm.
stuff is in there. So if he exceeds a line item in the budget, then there's the accountability there.
Okay.
Okay, we need a second on Tom's motion.
Hi, Steve Purcell, second.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, Josh, we're approving section 4-211,
A11.
A11, to not restrict the amount the town manager can spend.
Ed,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott. Scott,
Scott, are you there?
Steve,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes,
thank you, the motion was approved.
Sorry about this, I'm just updating. Okay, the next one, the Charter Review Committee added into section 4-3. At the very beginning of that section, they put in a statement that defines all the appointed positions in town. So it talked about the town manager, the town attorney, the chief of police, the fire chief, the director of public works, the finance director, and blah, blah, blah. They felt the need to be explicit here in all the appointed positions. The Rules and Procedures Committee did not agree with that. So basically, we do not have that in the version that we're working because we're using the baseline from the Rules and Procedures Committee. Does anybody feel strongly that we should include that or just leave it as is?
It sounds, I think it's a good idea, but where would it be in 4.3? Like, where would it go?
It would go right at the, it would be inserting A,
Where
because
it's,
right now, well, I'll have to go back and let me close
Yeah,
out
A.
here.
A is department heads.
Yeah, so it would insert a section right above department heads that would say the appointed administrative officers of the town of Bridgewater shall be, and it lists them all right there.
I personally think it's a good idea because it gets confusing, it clarifies who's appointed, who, as I would find that helpful.
So Jan,
Okay.
my only comment on that is if they want to have a newly established appointed position, like let's say Bridgewater wants to be super progressive and say we're going to have a appointed chief innovation officer. And if it's not outlined in the charter, they couldn't add that.
Or if they want to change one of these positions, they can't do it either. So putting it in the charter, Janet, I understand what you're saying. It provides additional clarity, but it really locks you in and you can't change it.
Like, and I think a good org chart that says appointed elected is totally a good thing to have, but I don't think that education piece needs to be in the charter.
I mean, it could go in the administrative code. The council can vote to clarify that in the administrative code, but you put it in the charter, it's going to be another 10 years before it's going to get reviewed again. Or 6 years, sorry.
Okay. If there's
I'm
some way,
just-
putting it somewhere so somebody would know, that would be for the time being. If they can put it somewhere that it wouldn't have to be affected by the child, so
Yeah.
somewhere, somewhere
Yeah.
for somebody, definitions or somewhere, but you wouldn't want it in the charter for definitions either, so.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing that it's not a good thing to have. I just don't know if the governing document is the place that you want it. It's not as fluid in here as it should be.
Okay, someone like to move on this one?
I, Thomas Golden, motion to not include that paragraph in section 4-3.
I have one more question. Me and my
Oh.
question.
Well, let's get the second before we have
Oh,
questions.
okay, sorry.
I second. Steve Purcell second.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Question, Janet.
Oh, well, I'm just reading the last sentence, and such additional administrative officers or departments as may be created. Would that, I'm just putting it out there, would that help with the concerns if something was added?
Yeah, but so right, like, well, if you're going to have an ordinance just to supersede it anyway, why bother adding it to the charter?
Okay, all right, well, I just noticed
Yeah.
that.
No, yeah, I'd rather you ask. I've missed things once or twice, believe it or not.
Okay, so we have a seconded. Any further questions? All right, Josh, we're voting on section 4-3, not to have the appointed positions listed in the charter.
Okay, Ed,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Janet.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you all. All right, moving down here, we've got a bunch of things that I captured, and I didn't want to lose sight of any of these that were either in the citizen survey or that we got from the public forum. So we're going to review some of these. Some of these we've already done. So everything you see in green here, we've already included. So about half of them, but we should be able to get through these pretty quickly. So the first one here, there was a general statement made in the citizen survey to enhance government communication. So that's possibly already covered in the section that we updated tonight, 2-6C.
And point out that Janet's comment about the administrative code and the lack of its enforcement, it's covered there. It's just not being enforced.
Right. But I mean, you could expand enhanced government communication to a whole bunch of different things, right?
Right.
It could be with the town manager, it could be with the town council, it could be with the department heads, it could be, it's just a general broad statement. So I think the fact that we have identified something already new in the charter to improve the way counselors interact with constituents as far as, promoting better communication. I think that covers at least the council piece of it. The town manager has regularly scheduled, I don't know what he calls them. There's a phrase that he uses, but it's maybe once a month. He has like an open meeting, a virtual meeting where people can just join in, and he gives updates on different town projects, and he takes questions and things like that. So Michael's pretty good about letting people know what's going on in town, and he responds to emails when people send him emails. So I think there's good communication with Michael. I don't necessarily know what's going on with the department heads, but I'm just not sure there's anything else we can do with this one unless somebody has a suggestion.
Nope.
No. Okay, so I'm not sure we need to vote on this because we're not really voting on anything. So we discussed it, and it is already covered, at least from the council perspective, in 2-6C.
See.
All right, the next one, comment, this came out of the public forum. The council should post their ordinances in clear, easy to understand language, not disguised with numbers and codes that mean nothing to the general public. This is, I guess, a general statement as well. I don't think it's applicable to the charter. I mean, ordinances are done in the administrative code, for one thing. I believe there is a format that they use that's a legal format when they develop an ordinance and they vote on it. They review it with the town attorney, and the attorney puts it in the proper language. So if we're suggesting that the language be changed, I don't think the charter is the place to do that. It might be something that's suggested to the council president or to the council in general, and they can work with the town attorney to see what can be done. But I don't think it's applicable to the charter. So anyone else have any comments on that?
Again, this is one of those things, a cheat sheet would help, but it's not something that is charter necessary.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see where it would be in the charter. Are they talking
Okay.
about when they have the ordinances, they go FY, but it always says what it is after, so I'm not sure what.
I don't either. I mean, there's a naming convention that they have, which there's a certain reason for the way it's just, described with the year and stuff and the number, so they can reference it going back. But the language in the ordinance itself, I mean, the ones that I've seen are pretty understandable. So I don't know. Okay, the next one here. Somebody wanted to have a realistic reordering of the administrative code to allow the by-town fishery committee to be under the conservation department and to allow the parks and trails network to be under the conservation department. So again, this is all laid out in the administrative code. It's not applicable to the charter. This is something that the fishery committee, if they want to be reorganized and they want to be put in a different area, they should work with the town manager and the council to make that happen.
I agree. There's nothing we can do with that.
Ed, procedurally for your chart here,
Yeah.
should lines 135, 137 be red rather than green?
Oh, yeah, I'm just noting to myself that we covered it, but yeah, we didn't do anything with it. Good point. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for, the minutia.
Yeah. All right. the next one, somebody in the public forum said, why don't we move the finance committee into the administrative code? So the finance committee is defined in the section 6, article 6, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I think to
Section,
that
it's section
question,
6, section 6-9, it describes the whole finance committee, so.
I think
moving
to
it-
that question, we're not here to decide what goes in the administrative code.
Yeah,
That's beyond our scope. And it's much harder to make adjustments to the charter. The reason it's in the charter is to make sure that the elected officials don't take it out.
yeah. All right, so this one here, not applicable to the charter, not something that is within our purview to do that. Line 141, just another general statement, changes to committees. They wanted to have more committees elected as opposed to appointed. So, committees are not, other than the finance committee, there are no other committees in the charter. The committees are defined in the administrative code. The membership, how they're selected, that's all the administrative code. So this is not applicable to the charter. And the fact that, somebody wants to have more of them to be elected, again, that would be something that a citizen group could get together and make a proposal to the council. Okay, line 143, this was update the hiring and reporting structure for the town attorney. We actually did that. We addressed that and we voted on it. We completed that. Section 1, line 145 was update the library trustee section with more clearly defined roles and responsibilities. As you recall, we spent a lot of time doing that as well. Line 147, require the department heads to present yearly to the town council. This came out of the, excuse me, the questionnaire that we sent to the employees. I think this implies that maybe there's some concern by employees that maybe the department heads aren't always being upfront with what's going on, so.
On this one, I think we could put it in there, but I think it is better fit in the administrative code.
Okay. Anyone else? That's good comment, Tom. Anyone feel strongly that,
Yeah, I
should put-
agree with Tom.
okay, so this is not applicable to the charter.
I mean, honestly, if a specific department's doing something big, they should be talking to the town council more than on an annual basis anyway.
Yeah. All right. Line 149, please, if anybody has any concerns or if I'm moving too fast and you want to talk about more of it, just interrupt me, please. I just want to get through this. The Charter Review Committee in 2014 updated section 6.4. And one of the employees asked to consider those changes. So my comment here was, since we used the 2017 Rules and Procedures version as a baseline, this was not included because they didn't support it. Do we want to go back and revisit this and look at what they put in and just see if that's something we want to consider including? I can tell you what it. So section 6.4 is supplemental budgets and appropriations. Essentially what they did, and let me go to the charter so you can see what they, I'll explain it. Okay, so what they did was in each section, starting with supplemental appropriations, they basically said any action for supplemental appropriation must adhere to MGL's Chapter 44, Section 32. So they deleted everything and basically just said that only MGL should be followed here, that we should not have any of our own internal procedures to manage supplemental appropriations. It should only be dictated to us by the state. And they did that with supplemental appropriations. They did it with emergency appropriations. They did it with transfer of appropriations, reduction of appropriations. So it sounds like what they did was they didn't like the fact that, we had our own specific process. They were either unhappy with the process, and they just said, let's get rid of it and just go by what Mass General Law says. So this was an employee that, or several employees that commented on this and wanted to basically go back and relook at this. So my feeling right now is, we're self-governing. We have our own way of managing. We are certainly under Mass General Law, but we can override Mass General Law by instituting our own procedures, which is what we've done to give us more flexibility and autonomy from the state. Any other comments on this?
So my opinion from a quick read of Mass General Law 4431, it's rather prescriptive on the definition of emergency. So I'm in favor of not following.
Okay. Anyone else? Thanks, Tom. Okay. Next one, require town councilors to hold periodic citizen feedback sessions.
I think we addressed that earlier today.
Yep, we did. So we addressed that with Cleone's. That was 2-6C15. Okay. 153, ensure a consistent timetable for capital requests. After reviewing this, my comment was it's not applicable to the charter. The timeline is established by ordinance in the admin code. You go back, you look at the section on the capital program. It talks at a very high level about how the capital program works, how it's defined, but it doesn't lay out a specific timeline in terms of when, different deliverables and milestones have to be met. That's not the kind of stuff that goes in the charter. That's, further delineated in the administrative code.
So if it's in the admin code, don't touch it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, did I cut somebody off? Was that you, Tom? I heard
Yeah,
somebody.
I was just agreeing with you, Ed. It's fine.
Okay. All right, I'm going to make these red, and assuming that we're not going to be doing anything with these. If you feel strongly, let me know. All right, 155 was make the town clerk appointed. We addressed that, even though the CRC did not agree with it. 157, one of the employees said eliminate Article 7, Section 7.3, elections and related matter. So this is the section that talks about when you have a number of people on a ballot, the order in which their names are listed on the ballot. And it talks, there's a process, a random process that is followed to ensure that no one's given, sort of preferential treatment in the way the names are listed on a ballot. Now, somebody wanted to remove that, and I don't think that's a good thing. Would you like to read that section?
Right now, they're drawn like basically out of a hat, and to who goes top and bottom. and
Correct.
Yeah.
We tend to go with the top. So I say it shouldn't matter who goes on. So I have no problem with the way it is myself.
Okay. So right now, the names are selected randomly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it should stay how it is.
I agree.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna disagree with that one. And I think that's it, guys. The other two that we completed these. This was provide more oversight of the town manager by the town council. And we upgraded section 4-1 on that. And we added the gender neutral language, which was something we added on our own. So that was completed as well.
Excuse me, Ed.
Yep.
On the one we just talked to about random who's going to be on the ballot at what point. You put it in red. Should you change that to not sure? Because we definitely know we don't agree. Or
Oh,
do you want to remove the word not sure?
yeah.
Because we don't agree to any changes.
All right, so that's pretty much everything that I was able to capture in the differences between the 2014 CRC and the 2017 Rules and Procedures Committee, and then the stuff that got added by the survey and the public forums, and then anything that we added on our own.
And to clarify for anyone that hasn't seen the top, this also includes like the grammatical changes that in the article, it's listed as like various or whatever.
Yep. I'll go back in and put the date, anything that we talked about tonight, I'll put tonight's date. I'll go back and look at the date that we discussed. We did this one on 4-1 and put that in here. I just want to make sure that we have reference points. So if questions get asked, we can say, oh yeah, we discussed that or we voted on that date. Okay. That's it for the decision maker. Any other further comments on that?
Make sure you hit save, Ed. That's all I have to say.
I just did. All right, so that completes old business for tonight, and we had nothing listed for new business. And we're have another round of public comment. I don't see anyone here. Alan dropped, whoever that was.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When I was going through the town code, and I don't have it in front of me, I just made a note to myself that it was on page 53. They were talking about when they remove somebody, this would be in relationship to the charter of section 9-7, removal of a member. And it just struck me because I saw they're saying, and I'd have to go back and read it, but in the town code, it said 3 consecutive months of missing. But we have it as meetings. So I don't know, I'd have to, if we want to look at it more carefully, but it says in the town code months, and it's on page 53, but I didn't write down, I think it was F. I just quickly wrote down F, page 53 of the town code. And it said 3 consecutive months, but so I went back and looked at section 9-7 and it says we as consecutive meetings. So I don't know if that's a conflict or not, but I just wanted to point it out. And I apologize, I don't have the town code. I didn't want to print it because it was about.
So Janet, I pulled up section 9-7 here.
Yeah.
Right here, it says, if the official fails to attend regularly scheduled meetings for a period of 3 consecutive meetings without express leave. So they meet every 2 weeks, right?
Right. So,
Right.
and Janet, what I think is going to have to happen is when when this charter's like approved and revised, the admin code has to get revised to match this.
It
Okay.
does. Yeah,
So
I
we
just-
are being more restrictive on their ability to be absent. So rather than being absent for 6 meetings, now that's cut in half.
Okay, I just, where
Yeah,
I saw
no, yeah,
months and weeks, I just wanted to,
totally. Yep.
that's a good catch, Janet. You need to be the charter admin code police.
I don't know about that.
No, I mean, that's true. I mean, if there's a conflict between the two, that needs to be addressed. And the charter outweighs the admin code. So if the council wants to do something in the admin code that's contrary to what's listed in the charter, they can't do that.
Okay,
And it's up to the citizens to hold them accountable to that, you know?
okay.
Thanks for catching that one.
There's actually, Janet, for your benefit, there's going to be a lot of things in the admin code that have to change based on
Oh,
our.
I noticed that when I quickly was scanning through.
Yeah.
It's like,
But that's why we do this, right? Like we're making it better.
right,
Okay, so next meeting is the 21st. We're pretty much done now with the charter as far as our changes, recommendations and such. So I sent out a draft of a presentation that we could potentially use at the public forums. Maybe what we do next meeting is we kind of walk through that. My thought was, as I mentioned in my email, that rather than have me do the whole thing, that maybe everybody takes 2 slides, two articles, and go back through the charter and pull out some of the highlights. You know, we don't want to get very wordy. We maybe just have 5 or 6 bullets on a slide, if in fact there's that many, because I know some of the articles, maybe we didn't make that many changes, but just pull out the main things that we updated and put those on each slide, send them back to me, and then I'll consolidate, and then we can review it on the 21st. So that's basically in 2 weeks. Does that sound like a good way of doing it?
I like it.
you have an updated, you're gonna send us an updated copy so we know what was changed. I have 100 copies of the charter each time we do it. I print
Oh,
out.
so based on what we talked about tonight, yeah, I'm going to send you guys the final, the final view of the charter and the final view of the decision matrix. Let me just pull up the, presentation. I don't know if any of you guys had a chance to look at this yet.
Yes.
Okay, I know it's not on the agenda. I'm sorry, I just real quick here, but so I figured if we just did a little bit about the background and what our strategy was, the process, I'm not sure at this point. I put it in there, but I'm not sure we really need to go in much. There's really not a lot around our process per se, but we can debate that. There's a slide on general recommendations, and then there's one slide for each article. So this is kind of what I came up with for the background. When we were formed, who we are, the fact that we held meetings 2 to 3 times per month. I've got to go back and actually count the number of meetings that we had. And then just gave some highlights about what we did from June to August, from September to November, and then from December to April. So that's basically one background slide. Talked about our strategy, the fact that we wanted to minimize rework by utilizing the former committee's recommendations, setting realistic expectations, fixing key problems if we can, enhancing clarity and consistency, and then using citizen feedback. We could update that to say citizen/employee feedback. I thought it would be important to maybe put one slide in on the survey, but we don't have to, just to say these were the key takeaways. So we had four
I think it's
takeaways on the charter, and we had 4 that were non-charter impacting. So we can leave this out, but I just put it in there for the time being. Again, the process. And then this was the beginnings of a slide that just talked about what our general recommendations were. So we updated definitions, we added gender neutral language, we changed all the references from town to city, we updated MGL usage consistency, and we just made a lot of grammatical updates, but there may be more. So that was my beginning of it. And then this is what every slide would look like. So Article 1, whoever would take Article 1 would just go in and review it and just list. Again, these are bullets. These aren't complete sentences, but just go in and list the main things that you found in Article 1 that we addressed. And then Article 2, so on and so forth, right to the end. And then we would have a next step slide that would talk about what we want to accomplish after the public forums, which isn't very complicated. So if you agree kind of with that outline, then maybe we can at least have everybody kind of pick the articles that they want to work on, and then in the next meeting, I'll have to consolidate those and be able to have a walkthrough.
I like it.
Okay. You want me to just assign the articles in an email?
I think that's fine. Yeah, just do that.
Pick them out of a hat.
Then nobody
Pick
can
'em
say
out of a
no.
hat.
Well, I'm essentially picking them out of a hat. So let me do that. I'll send out an email, and if you're not happy, just let me know.
Be kind. Be kind.
Yeah.
I would like to take the opportunity to remind people of PowerPoint etiquette. There should not be more than 30 words per slide. You can talk as much as you want, but try to keep the text to a minimum.
Right. A slide is an aid. It's not a something you read from. It's a helper.
I've never done one, so if you can give me an example of what one line would be, what a line would look like.
Well, go back what I just showed you on the general recommendations, right? I listed 4, very, very crisp and clear, and then as whoever's going to go through the slides, then you'd add your verbalization around each bullet to talk through it.
Okay.
All right. Well, if you all agree that at least we have an approach, then I'll send out an email, and if you could get everything back to me maybe by the 18th. That way I can pull it all back together and send it out to everybody, and then we can discuss it on the 21st. So right now, the agenda for the 21st is basically going to look like reviewing the public forum prezo. And then also we need to pick some dates. We talked about doing the public forum in the first couple of weeks of May. So we need to schedule of forums. I did send an email to Mike Dutton asking him if we're still limited to doing Zoom calls. I know that the town hall's open, and I know that they are having meetings. I just don't know if if we could do a public forum event like at the senior center or at the town hall or something, we could actually do a face-to-face meeting or not. But I asked him and he hasn't responded back to me yet.
We could also do one outside, probably.
Yeah, we could. Although we're going to need, how are we going to present the prezo?
We could make that work. Technology, don't worry about. We'll take care of that.
You're gonna haul in a 70-inch TV or something and put it on a stand, or?
I have a projector and a screen. We'll be all right.
Hope it doesn't rain.
We'll have a
Yeah.
rain date. Don't worry. That stuff, don't worry about. Logistics is fine. Permission is the hard part.
All right.
Ed,
We'll
just
see.
giving you a heads up that on coming this Sunday, I'll be in Wilmington, Delaware for the next 2 weeks. So I will not be here next meeting nor the 24th, unfortunately.
Oh,
Be out there with Biden.
are you at Biden's house?
Yeah.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Next meeting, I'll be in Vegas on vacation, but I'm still gonna try to dial in.
Oh,
Should we move it to the 28th?
Darren, don't do that. You're on vacation. Don't worry about it. And I know Cleone can't make the 21st either. So I'm wondering now if we're even going to have a quorum.
And honestly, Ed, that week
Yeah.
is kind of heck for me. I'm teaching a fair lending school for the FDIC, so I would motion to move it to the 28th if people are okay with that.
Scott Pitt, a second.
Yeah, that would work for me better. as well.
Okay, all right. Josh, we're going to vote on changing our next meeting to April 28th. Pick a
Josh,
vote.
are you
Okay.
available?
Oh, yeah, ask Josh.
What is that? 28. Yeah, it's no problem.
My calendar.
All right, Ed,
Yep,
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes,
Scott,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Janet.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
all right, great. So Steve, make sure you vote. Can you vote before the 24th?
I'm gonna need to go, yeah, like in the next 2 days.
You got to go to the town hall.
Yeah,
You got to make
Yeah.
sure you vote on that question.
for sure.
Okay, very good. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
I, Thomas Golden, motion to adjourn the meeting.
Scott Pitt, a second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, Josh, we're voting to adjourn.
Ed,
Yes,
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Janet.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting is adjourned.
Good night,
thank you.
everyone.
night.
Janet, I'm gonna call you, okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Night.
Yeah.